What's up, everybody? Thank you for joining us today for episode 4 of the Not Five Guys podcast. I'm your host, Suraj. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about some NBA teams, doing a mid-season recap of them. Last week, we talked about some teams that are exceeding expectations and performing well. This week, we're going to talk about some teams that are disappointing and not performing as well as we thought that they would. We're also going to have our usual short fun segments that are going to be scattered throughout our episode. And we'll end with our weekly predictions. So with that being said, we're just going to quickly go around the horn and introduce ourselves.
What it do? I'm Kevin.
What's up? I'm Nikhil.
How's it going, guys? It's Phil.
I'm Jerry.
And like I said before, I'm your host, Suraj. So that's all of us. Hopefully you're pretty familiar with who we are, as this is our 4th episode. Anyways, moving into our first segment of today, we're going to start off with what we like to call Analytics 101. Phil, this is all you. Take it away.
So we like to talk a lot about analytics on our podcast. Therefore, for some of the listeners out there that may not know all these stats to the same degree and may not have the same background, we wanted to help introduce some of the stats that we talk about a lot on the podcast, help you get a better understanding of what they mean and how they're used. So today, I'm going to talk about offensive and defensive rating for NBA teams. These were developed by Dean Oliver in his 2004 book, Basketball on Paper. And there's a really great summary on Basketball Reference, getting into the nitty-gritty details of how this is calculated. And the key thing to look at when you're looking at offensive and defensive rating is that it's calculated differently on a player perspective than compared to when it's calculated for a team. So you want to make sure when you're looking at it, you're aware of if you're looking at the team statistic or the player statistic. Today, I'm going to be mostly focusing on the team. And so for offensive rating, this statistic is looking at the points that a team scores per 100 possessions that they are on offense. And so right now, the league average is 110. But if you look at the best team in the league, the best offense is the Dallas Mavericks at 117.6. So you're looking at an NBA game this year actually has about 100 possessions. So it's a really easy conversion that the Mavs are scoring about 117 points per game, which is 7 points better than your league average. The most interesting thing here is the difference between them and the second placed Rockets is 4 points. That same 4-point differential is the Rockets to the 17th ranked teams, the Phoenix Suns. It helps you see how good the Mavs offense has been this year. For defensive rating, it is the reverse of that. It's saying the amount of points a team allows per 100 possessions that they are on defense. Unsurprisingly here, the Bucks are the best in the league, just allowing only 102 points per 100 possessions. The great thing about offensive and defensive rating is that it helps you scale for things that you can't necessarily see when just looking at points per game, mainly being pace as well as if games go into overtime. This really comes into play with a team like the Milwaukee Bucks, where they play at the fastest pace in the league. And so they have the best defense according to defensive rating. And I think most people would agree with you that the Bucks have the best defense. But if you just looked at a general points per game, they give up the 8th least points in the league instead of having the best defense. And so that's where offensive and defensive rating can be really helpful when you're looking at a basketball team.
Yeah, thanks for that, Phil. That was really helpful. I'm glad you were able to point out that the Rockets have the second best offense in the league. So all the haters out there that say that James Harden doesn't pass or he can't play offense or it's boring to watch or Westbrook, a small ball is ruining the NBA. Well, they've got the second best offense in the NBA. So we'll leave it at that.
How's that defense, though?
Well, the defense isn't that great, but nobody says that their defense is ruining the NBA. They say that their offense is.
All right.
So we're now going to hop in and talk about a couple NBA teams that are underperforming, ones that are actually have been quite disappointing so far this season. This is a contrast to what we talked about in episode 3, which were a couple teams that were overperforming, that were performing better than expectations. So the first team that we're going to do a midseason recap on is the Atlanta Hawks.
Going into the season, the Atlanta Hawks actually had pretty big expectations. Going into 2018-19, I don't think people thought that much of the Atlanta Hawks. Of course, they made that big draft day trade, Luka Doncic for Trae Young, giving up a future first. Going into this year, that ended up becoming Cam Reddish. Of course, with their own pick, they took DeAndre Hunter. And people thought that they would improve on their last season's win total of 29. Going with their opening over-under was 34.5. If they had won that percentage of games, they would currently have around 23 wins, which would be one game back of the playoffs. But instead, they're 15-41. They have 26 games remaining, and to hit that over, they'd have to win 77% of their next 26 games, 20 of them. And 12 of those games are against playoff teams, while 3 are against the 9 seeds, which are the Wizards and the Blazers right now. So a lot of their players have been relatively underperforming. Obviously, we know about John Collins, who was actually 4th in preseason most improved odds, and of course gets suspended 25 games for performance-enhancing drugs, human growth hormone, or it's actually a compound called GHRP2. But Jerry, I know you know a little bit about disappointing players for the Hawks.
Yeah, I think the most disappointing player is probably Cam Reddish. They drafted him last year. They expect him to play more off the offensive side of the ball to really help Trae Young a lot. But that has not happened this year. When he's on the court, their offensive rating is 103.6, but when he is off the court, they're 105.3. That clearly shows that Cam Reddish isn't really helping their offense. And Trae Young has become the solely weapon of the Hawks offense, as the stat shows that when he is on the court, their offense is 110.4, but when he is off the court, the Hawks nearly score 93.4, which is devastating. And that huge drastic difference in offense has been one of the main reasons why they haven't been successful this year.
Yeah, DeAndre Hunter and Cam Reddish actually went into the season with the number 7 and number 10 Rookie of the Year odds, according to Bovada. And now only Hunter shows up. He's 10th in the NBA in Rookie of the Year odds. And Reddish you can't even find on the chart if you look for him. And I agree with what you said about Trae Young. Trae Young really is the entirety of this offense. Hunter is 399 in the league, and Reddish is 425th in player impact estimate, which is the NBA stat that kind of tries to do a recap or like rolling up all the stats that you get into one number. One of the things that you see about Trae Young is he takes a lot of unassisted shots. He's 18th in unassisted field goals made and 6th in unassisted three-point field goals made. And this is part of the reason why the Hawks are actually the 3rd highest percentage of ISO attempts. Even though they take the 3rd least, which, probably has a lot to do with the percentages, they actually score or get some points, like either they make the field goal or they get a foul and score a free throw on the highest percentage of their ISO looks this year.
Yeah, their offense has been pretty bad this year, but the main reason why the team is not performing as well, according to their record, 15-41, is probably their defense. Their defense is 2nd worst in the league. They're allowing 108.8 points allowed, which is 29th out of 30 teams. They're in the bottom, and there's a main reason of that. They don't really have a big that have paint protection. They are the 2nd worst team in the league. They average 53.9% to opponents' field goal percentage in the paint. And the opponent has 14.9 points per game on second chance point. That's because they can't really get the rebound. And stats has shown that the Hawks are only able to grab 70.5% of their defensive rebound, which clearly shows that they really need a big to help protect that paint and grab rebound. That's why they might have traded Dwayne Dedman for the trade right before the trade deadline in order to increase that paint. But that has not been great. So maybe they need to sign or draft a better defensive big man in next year's draft.
They just got Capella.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they made a trade to try and address some of this, but still, the numbers are pretty damning. They give up the 3rd highest opponent offensive rebound percentage and the 3rd highest opponent's second chance points. Obviously, they give up the 2nd most points per game, and they only score the 20th most. One of the things that you see is that they actually foul a lot. They give up the most fouls per game and the highest number of free throws per game. So it's a lot of those easy points that are leading to their downfall.
That's a good recap on the Hawks. I mean, it's sad to see Trae Young's outstanding nightly efforts go to waste, but, hopefully Cam Reddish decides to actually show up next year so they can be a little bit better.
I mean, he's got to get like 400 places better in PIE. So
Yeah, well, let's start with baby steps first, but yeah, hopefully he'll get there one day. All right, now moving on to the Western Conference. This NBA team has made the playoffs 22 straight years, but they're in jeopardy of missing out this year, the San Antonio Spurs.
That's right, Serge. You're looking at a team that's the model of consistency in the current NBA, but this year they've fallen off a cliff. You're right. The 22-year playoff streak, this year it's looking like that's going to end. Preseason expectations for them were just about the same as last year, looking at an over-under of 46.5 after winning 48 last year. But they're currently 23-31, which is only a 35-win pace. They're 5 games out of the playoffs, so that streak is in jeopardy. And when you look at what's different about this team, it's really just about the same team from last year. You're getting DeJounte Murray back from a torn ACL who didn't play at all last year. You do lose Davis Bertans and his three-point shooting ability. You added Trey Lyles instead. He started 44 games this year, although I can't say he's done anything in those 44 starts. And then you're starting to see some of their key contributors from last year that are on the wrong side of 30. You can see the age starting to deteriorate their game.
Yeah, particularly a guy whose age is starting to catch up with him is LaMarcus Aldridge. So just running through a couple of the basic stats about him this year and comparing it to his years past. His points per game is down. It's at 19.1. Last year it was over 21, and the year before that it was over 23. His rebounding has also suffered a little bit. It's down to 7.6 rebounds per game, although even the last year he was at 9.2. Now, a reason for this decline in rebounds per game is because he's shooting more threes this year. He's averaging the highest 3 points attempted of his career at 3 per game, and he's also shooting well at roughly 40%. But his three-point shooting it's not really an aspect of his game that he's really good at or he mastered, or it's something that he was really known for. It was more so done as a sacrifice for DeMar DeRozan, something that him and Popovich worked through, because giving DeMar DeRozan the room in the paint in order to operate and play his mid-range jump shot game was a higher priority for them, and it's how they're actually going to improve as an offense. So that's why he's camping out at the three-point line more so than his entire career, and the result is his field goal percentage is the lowest since 2016.
Yeah, I think the big thing to focus on with the Spurs is that pairing of LaMarcus Aldridge and DeMar DeRozan. From the get-go, people were questioning it of, you've got two guys that love the mid-range. How are they going to work together in today's NBA? And last year, it worked out okay. Like I said, they still made the playoffs. They were still a decent enough team getting to 48 wins. But running it back with that same team, it's looking like teams have started to figure them out. And when you look at the pairing of Aldridge and DeRozan, NBA.com has a nice feature where you can look at team offensive rating and defensive rating when players are on and off the court. When they are both on the court, the Spurs' offensive rating is 110, but their defensive rating is 113. That's a -3 differential. When just LaMarcus Aldridge is on the court, you're looking at a -6 differential. With just DeMar DeRozan, you're basically at even. So you can already see that Aldridge is one of the key guys bringing that offense down. The most interesting thing to me, though, is when neither is on the court, they're actually at a net positive +6 differential between their offensive and defensive rating. So you got to wonder, how is this team constructed? Is the team construction the main reason for their failures this year?
Yeah, I think team construction is definitely the reason. If you look at the surrounding pieces, the Spurs really prided themselves on their ability to defend well and also really capitalize on the corner three. They had sixth man in Manu Ginobili when they were at their peak, who was obviously one of the best in the game. But this year, they really don't have any of that. They have Bryn Forbes. They've got Rudy Gay, who's also aging. They've got Lonnie Walker, who's sort of a young project. And they don't really have these guys that can gel together. And with regards to the pairing of DeMar and LaMarcus Aldridge, DeMar really is the better half of the two. Ever since joining the San Antonio Spurs, Pop wanted him to take more of a playmaker's role. So he obviously never played point guard in his entire career with Toronto because of Lowry, but he's been a little bit more ball dominant as of late and creating more as a facilitator ever since joining the Spurs. So looking at some of his stats this year, he's actually one of only 2 players in the entire league that's averaging at least 25 and 5 while shooting higher than 50%. from the floor. The other is Giannis Antetokounmpo. He went on a run this year and has the longest streak of 20-plus points and greater than 50% field goal percentage by a guard in NBA history. He set that at 13 games. Additionally, he's still scoring the ball well. He's averaging 23 points per game, and this is the highest since his MVP caliber season back in 2016. And his field goal percentage is at 53%, which is the highest by far in his career. His career average is 46%. So we see the things DeMar is doing on the offensive side of the ball, scoring at a high clip. Additionally, as a passer, as a facilitator, he's averaging 5.2 assists per game, which is the second highest in his career, and almost 6 rebounds per game, which is the second highest in his career. So I think the pairing is really a little bit unfair to say that DeMar and LaMarcus both are kind of on a decline. I think DeMar can still be an elite player. He just needs a better team around him, whereas LaMarcus is a little bit on the decline. His PER is his second lowest since 2009, so all aspects of his game seem to be dropping. Part of this could be due to the pairing with DeMar, but I think some of it has to do with his age as well.
Yeah, I think this team haven't been built well, and I think another thing we have to mention with this team is their defense. It has been on a decline the past couple years, and they're now 25th in defensive rating this year. And so when you look at that, DeMar's an all right defender, but no one would call him that above average. LaMarcus, not that great. The guys surrounding him, Patty Mills, Bryn Forbes, not great defenders. And so that doesn't help when you don't have an offense that's functioning successfully around your two best players. And so you can see why the Spurs have fallen out of the playoff race this year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what adjustments they make in the second half. I mean, I hope that they're able to keep this string of playoff appearances alive, but we'll see. It might take a magical run by DeRozan to keep that string alive.
I sure hope they don't make the playoffs this year because they're competing with us.
Blazers are going to have a tough time with Lillard out.
Yeah,
that's true. Well, I agree with your assessment of what they're going to do about Manu Ginobili. You know, who's going to block James Harden to close out a series now?
Well, that wasn't really to close out a series. You can't close out a series when it's best of 7 and you win game 5. All right, moving on. We're now going to talk about a segment that we like to call This Day in History. Kevin, this is all you. Take it away.
Yeah, with the All-Star coming up this week, I want to do a This Day in History for something that was All-Star related. If you're listening in on Thursday, the day that we're releasing this, it is exactly 9 years ago this Thursday that Kobe won his 4th All-Star MVP. He tied a 49-year record that was set by Bob Pettit in the 1960s. He won his very first one in Philly in 2002, and his 4th one was in LA in 2011. And over the course of those 4 games, Kobe averaged 31.5 points, and it was just announced right before the All-Star that they would be renaming the All-Star MVP award after Kobe Bryant. And I think that's the right move after all the contributions that Kobe has made, not just to the league, but specifically in the All-Star game.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there, Kevin. But now let's actually hop into the NBA All-Star game and talk a little bit about what we saw this past weekend. So the first thing we're actually going to be talking about is Player of the Weekend. I think that the player of the weekend for the NBA All-Star game this year should be Chris Paul. Chris Paul, as you all know, he didn't make the All-Star game for the past few years, but he was voted in this year. We talked a little bit about him and his contributions in episode 3 when we did a midseason recap on the Thunder, but obviously he's playing really well. But the reason why I give him player of the weekend is because first of all, he had a really good All-Star game. He scored 23 points. He played the 3rd most minutes on Team LeBron. And he also led the team with 6 assists. So he scored a lot. He dished the ball out the most on the team. And he actually played a lot as well. So another thing that I thought was really cool was he actually dunked for the first time in his entire career off of an alley-oop.
He needs a drug test, man.
I know. He probably got one right after the game. He's like, what, 75 years old, and he was able to get up like that off of an alley-oop? That deserves player of the weekend right there. But lastly, something that might have gone unnoticed was how well he gelled with James Harden when the two closed out the game together.
Of course.
That is real veteran leadership right there. He gets a bad rap for getting talked about as a bad teammate. You know, he's whiny, he's this, he's that. But you know what? He put that aside. He teamed up with Harden well. They were passing each other the ball, being good teammates. They were both whining to the refs a lot at the end of the game, so it's good to see that some things just never change.
I want to go and talk about the All-Star Game MVP. You've heard the counting stats: 30 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals. You know Kawhi likes to sit out back-to-backs. But let me tell you something. Kawhi has taken it to a new level. He now sits out back-to-back quarters. Quarter one, he shot 4 for 4 from 3, scored 12 points, and of course, the team takes a 12-point lead. His player impact estimate was top of the game in the first quarter. He takes off Q2, Q3. Q4 comes back with a vengeance. He only scored 2 points, but he had 3 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 steals in the fourth quarter. Lowest opponent effective field goal percentage in the fourth quarter, and highest opponent turnover ratio in the fourth quarter, meaning he's forcing the ball out and not allowing easy shots. On top of that, an average player impact estimate in this game was like 9. His Q4 player impact estimate was 57, and the next closest was 33. And now let me tell you a little bit about how PIE is calculated. It's essentially the number of positive stats accrued by a player minus the number of negative stats accrued divided by the total amount of positive stats in a time period. Meaning, basically, he did 57% of the positive things in the fourth quarter.
I'm going to have to go with Trae Young for my pick. Trae's the only player to have competed in 3 different events this weekend. Even though he did pretty badly in the 3-point shooting contest, I think he made it up in both of the Rising Stars and the actual All-Star game. In both of the games that he played in, he led in assists. He was only one of 4 players to have a double-double in the actual All-Star game, being a first-year player. And he got to 10 assists with only 15 minutes. And the next closest was Lowry with 8 assists, and he played double the amount of time. Trae was able to compete at a high level in multiple events this weekend, and that's why he's my pick for player of the weekend.
Yeah, that's fair. He's got those young, fresh legs, so he has durability to go through multiple events. But the final thing I'm going to say about Chris Paul and why I think above all else he deserves player of the weekend was actually because we can all agree that this was the most successful NBA All-Star game in recent memory. And part of it was due to the format change. We finally saw guys actually competing really hard, especially in that fourth quarter. And that was all due to Chris Paul. He was the one that actually proposed the new All-Star game change to Adam Silver with the new rules. And because of his proposals, the league went through with it. The game was far more exciting. Players actually tried. And that's part of the reason why we saw this All-Star weekend be such a success. So because of that, I'm going to have to double down and say that the player of the weekend is Chris Paul.
I'm going to give you that. For as good as Kawhi was in the fourth quarter, he still took quarters 2 and 3 off. Chris Paul, through the entire game, lowest opponent effective field goal percentage for the whole game. Obviously, he scored the most fourth quarter points for Team LeBron, who eked it out at the end. And he forced the 7th highest opponent turnover percentage, which was the 5th most on Team LeBron. The other thing was, through quarters 2 and 3, AD and Kawhi as a tandem were just horrible on defense. Throughout the entire game, opponents scored 58 points in the paint, 22 fast break points, and 18 points off turnovers when they were together in the game. And all of those were top in the All-Star game.
Yeah, I'm going to have to also flip my vote as well to Chris Paul. He's a veteran leader out there. I don't think anyone expected him to be that good this weekend, especially being as old as he is. But I think that really shows that he's a very impactful player when he plays for the Thunder as well, because even though he wasn't the leading scorer with the Thunder or here in the All-Star game, he's still able to help both of his teams to victory.
I agree. Glad we were able to come to a consensus here that we've got Chris Paul as our player of the weekend. Moving on, let's now talk about our surprise of NBA All-Star Weekend.
So initially, I was going to talk about Chris Paul because I don't think anyone expected how good he was going to do this weekend. But since we've already given him player of the weekend, I'll go to another surprise of the weekend, which for me was Miles Bridges on Friday night. I think when you look at that Team USA roster, you're looking at a team with an all-star in Trae Young and the 3 Rookie of the Year favorites in Zion, Ja, and Kendrick Nunn. But who was the guy that led Team USA to victory? How about Miles Bridges? He keyed the third quarter run that really gave the U.S. the victory in the game. They were down 12, went on a 27-5 run, and at that point, they didn't look back. You look at his counting stats, pretty good. 20 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. He was the key to the Team USA bench lineup that was a plus 33 in the game. And so to me, that was surprising. I haven't watched any Miles Bridges. I mean, the Hornets aren't that good, but he took over that game on Friday, and for me, that was the surprise of the weekend.
My surprise of the weekend is Bam Adebayo won the skill challenge. He was supposedly by Vegas to have the worst odds to win the skill challenge at plus 1200, and he shoot 12.1% from 3-point line and 9.1% this season. He made 1 out of 11, but he shot 3 out of 6 during the challenge, and he beat Spencer Dinwiddie in the first round, who was the 2018 champions. Then he beat Pascal Siakam, which is probably one of the most skillful bigs in the league, and he beat Sabonis, who was also unexpected. But Bam Adebayo won skills challenge is definitely a surprise.
My surprise of the week is the Elam ending to the All-Star game, which Serge kind of talked about earlier. A lot of fans and players alike have been complaining about how the All-Star game is getting kind of boring, where it's just a shootout, no defense is played. But I think the Elam really brought the All-Star game back into light again. This past weekend, we saw with the Elam and getting rid of the clock and playing to a certain score in the fourth quarter, it really drove teams to play not only offense but also defense, trying to stop your opponent from reaching that target score. This was evident by half of the entire game's blocks were contributed in the fourth quarter, and especially down the stretch, we saw that Team LeBron was down, and they were able to hold Team Giannis, and Team Giannis ended up missing 9 of their last 10 shots in the game. We saw Larry taking charges, and from the fans and player reactions on Twitter, people saying that it's like a playoff atmosphere now. I think it's definitely a surprise of the weekend.
Yeah, I have to agree, Kevin. I think going into it, everyone on Twitter was, oh, what is the format? I don't get it. People were just super confused about it. But yeah, post-game, it's just overwhelmingly glowing how well it turned out. You get the players competing on each end. I also really liked that they had the charity aspect of it, and not only that they donated winnings to charity, but that they had the kids there from the charities sitting right behind the basket, cheering on those players, and that helped. The players are going to compete harder when you've got these kids screaming behind you, trying to win that $100,000. So I thought that was really cool.
So I will agree with Kevin. During the first quarter, I was watching Kawhi just shooting straight threes, multiple threes, and seeing lobs. It was kind of bored. So I decided to come back and watch the fourth quarter, and it was a lot more exciting. It's quite intense. Like, team is actually playing defense, and it's very competitive. That's what I really like to see.
Yeah, that was definitely a good surprise of the weekend. I'm glad that this new All-Star format came to fruition and it was such a success. So that was really cool to see. But now let's close with the final topic that we have with regards to the NBA All-Star Weekend, which is the dunk of the weekend.
My dunk of the weekend, this dunk scored 50 points. That's the most important part. It's Aaron Gordon throw it offside of the backboard and then one-handed 360 windmills. That's amazing to me. Like, if you don't even look at it to see where the rim is, he just catches the ball, turn around, and then extend the hand and just put the ball inside the basket.
I don't know, dude. I have to give my dunk of the weekend vote to Derrick Jones. Off the backboard, through the legs, over a dude. Think about how many things you have to juggle there at the same time. You have to look up to catch the ball off the backboard, but you also have to be aware of where your legs are, because you have to get high enough so that you can do the through the legs and not hit the guy on the ball, like when you put the ball down. The other thing is, Aaron Gordon's dunk was amazing, but he missed it once. Derrick Jones put this one down first try, and with power. Insane power, too. He was going at it. For the spectacle that is the dunk contest, tipping your hand by giving away what dunk you're going to do and then missing it, it just takes a little bit away from the experience, and that's why I have to go with Derrick Jones.
All right, my dunk of the weekend is actually Aaron Gordon over Taco Fall. Now, the reason why I'm picking this one is because let's really just think about what just happened. Taco Fall is 7'5", Aaron Gordon just jumped over a 7'5" dude and did a dunk. And the reason why I picked this dunk was because if you actually looked at the dunk, what I wanted to see was how much pressure he actually put on Taco Fall's shoulders while grabbing the ball, to see if he actually used Taco Fall's shoulders as a little bit of a springboard to get there. But no, he didn't. He legitimately just jumped over a 7'5" dude. And also, this dunk wasn't even planned. This was one of their, nonsensical, we're just going to give everybody that ever does a dunk 50, so we have to do a little playoff to see who wins the dunk contest. But that was not planned. He jumped over a 7'5" dude without any pressure, without any planning, and ultimately made the dunk on his first try. I'm going Aaron Gordon over Taco Fall. He deserved that championship. He deserves 2. He has 0. I'm with him. Never do the dunk contest ever again.
Man, I think he should have won the first one, but I think Derek Jones gave him a run for his money here. How can you get a 50 for missing a dunk first try and making it second try in the first round when Derek Jones did just as hard a dunk and he missed it first try and Dwayne Wade gave him a 9 for it? I mean, come on, dude. He shouldn't have gotten 550s or 650s or whatever he got, but I agree with you. He should have won against Zach LaVine, but I don't agree with you that the Taco Fall dunk was as extraordinary as you're making it seem, because he definitely humped Taco Fall at the back of the head. His crotch area made contact with the back of Taco Fall's head. I'm still giving it to Derek Jones.
I don't know about Aaron Gordon jumping over Taco Fall. If you see the replay, Taco Fall was bending down a little bit. His head was kind of slightly down. So I don't know if you can clearly say he actually cleared 7'5". So if you pick another player like Dwight Howard or someone slightly shorter, it might be a better dunk because he actually cleared someone completely. So I'm giving dunk of the week to Derek Jones Jr. off the backboard through the leg over the dude. Man, that's impressive.
Yeah. All right. Nikhil, I'll agree with you. I will give Derek Jones Jr. off the backboard through the legs the dunk of the weekend. But Jerry, to counter your point, 7'5" versus 7'4" versus 7'3", either one of those is still impressive. So whether or not Taco Fall's head was slightly down or he wasn't exactly in a perfect 100% erect position, it's still pretty impressive to me. But yeah, Nick, I'll give it to you. We'll give it to Derek Jones Jr. That's dunk of the weekend.
I gotta say though, if Zion made that reverse 360 through the legs, I would have given him that.
Yeah. I agree.
Zion, you had 3 tries. You could have made one of them.
But just to recap what we saw today with the NBA All-Star Weekend Awards, we settled on our player of the weekend being the 75-year-old point guard from Oklahoma City, Chris Paul. Our surprise of the weekend was a new All-Star format and how much of a success that was. And our dunk of the weekend went to Derek Jones Jr. of the Miami Heat because Dwayne Wade didn't want Aaron Gordon to win.
Hey, 2 other people gave him 9.
I know.
So don't just blame D Wade.
It's funny to blame D Wade because he gets a lot of hate on Twitter for it. But before we actually move on from our NBA All-Star Weekend Awards, we all know how Common did a spectacular job introducing all the All-Stars this past weekend. And if you have followed our show and our few episodes, you would notice that there's a certain player that I think was an All-Star snub. So because he wasn't there, Common wasn't able to do an introduction for him, so I'm going to do one for him real quick. All right, here we go. He's a killer from the mid-range. His cross will leave you frozen. Starting at guard for the San Antonio Spurs, it's DeMar DeRozan.
I thought you were going to talk about Bradley Beal.
Same.
No, I had to pay homage to DeMar DeRozan. I think he deserved a spot in the West. I'm actually going to say he deserved it over either Chris Paul or Devin Booker, but Chris Paul was player of the weekend, so he redeemed himself. DeRozan deserved it over Devin Booker.
He's never going to not love a USC player. Just let him have it.
I don't know.
And you know what's going to happen. Devin Booker is coming for you, dude. Last week, you said he wasn't the biggest All-Star snub, and this week you said he shouldn't have been on the All-Star team. I mean, he's coming for you, dude.
It's all right.
You got to be careful.
DeMar will protect me. All right, the last thing we're going to do today is we're going to hop into our prediction segment where we, like you've heard before, make our 3 predictions related to sporting events going on during this week. So we're keeping track of everyone's results, and obviously whoever is in last place, they have to undergo the punishment, which is eating a spoonful of Vegemite. You will be able to actually catch full coverage of this punishment on our Twitter and Instagram at @not5guys. Right now, Kevin is in the lead, sitting really pretty at 7-2. Nikhil and Jerry are also really safe right now, both at 6-3. I'm at 4-5, and Phil is in last place at 2-7.
Oof. Not looking too good.
No, it's
Betting expert.
all right. So the first prediction is we're actually going to do our first ever college basketball prediction. It's going to be the Kansas Jayhawks versus the Baylor Bears on Saturday.
I got Baylor winning. They're on a hot 23-game win streak, and they've beaten all 5 ranked opponents this year. Meanwhile, Kansas is 4-7 on ranked opponents and losing to all 3 of the top 10, including Baylor, which they've played earlier this year. So I've got to go with Baylor.
You know what? Kansas is my pick this week, not Baylor. They are actually really hot on offense during their 11-game win streak, and Devin Dawson is the guy that will carry them beat the Baylor.
Every team ranked number 1, other than Baylor this year, has lost a high-profile matchup. Baylor is the only team to withstand going through multiple top 10, top 25 teams and come out alive, and for that reason, I'm going to have to take Baylor.
I'm going to actually go and take Kansas. I think obviously they have played Baylor already this year. They lost, but I think that they're going to make the adjustments. Baylor's going to actually feel a little bit of pressure. We're leaning towards coming up on March, so a lot of pressure at stake. They're at home, but I don't think that's going to make a difference. Give me Kansas in a surprise upset.
I don't know about calling it an upset. Kansas is the best ranked team according to both KenPom and Sagarin ratings. And so even though, yes, it's at Baylor, I'm with you here. I think Kansas takes this in a game that I think they should be favored in as the best team in college basketball.
All right, our next prediction is in the NBA. Celtics versus Lakers this Sunday.
In this game, I'm actually going to be at this game checking in on my prediction. I think the Lakers take it at home here. Kemba got his win over LeBron earlier this year. I don't think LeBron gives him a second one.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to stick with the Lakers as well. They're at home. I think they're just a flat-out better team than the Celtics. I think it'll be a close game, but give me the Lakers. They've rested well over the All-Star break, and I think they'll come out with the big win on Sunday.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing here. All the teams are on equal rest, equal standing. I mean, we'll see how these teams are going to come out, but I think the Lakers just have more. And with the rest not taking any other players out, more weapons, more points.
You know, the Lakers are clearly rested, and they're the number 1 team in the West, but they have disappointed me last time against other teams, and they lost. So I'm going with Celtics this time.
I'm going with the Lakers. Lakers are going to be back for vengeance after their last brutal defeat to the Celtics, but I think they got this one.
All right, our final game for this week's predictions is the Milwaukee Bucks versus the Toronto Raptors.
I got the Bucks. They got Giannis. That's all you need.
You know, they might have the Bucks, but the Raptors are the hottest team in the NBA. They might even cool off a little bit during the break, but I believe in Nick Nurse, man. Raptors.
I'm actually not going to take the Bucks because if I want a chance at winning, I can't take the Bucks. Otherwise, I'd pick the same things as Kevin picked this week. So I got to take the Raptors just for my own sake.
All right, I'm taking the Bucks because Giannis is the best player in basketball right now. The Raptors don't really have an answer for him. I think the Bucks actually win this one by a lot.
See, you say that it's after the All-Star break, all these teams are going to be rested, but the Bucks are actually coming in. It's the second night of a back-to-back for them. It'll be their 4th game after the break already. So they're going to be coming in tired, and I think the Raptors can take it at home.
All right, there we have it. Those are our weekly matchups, our weekly predictions. We'll keep you posted on the winner of all of those. And obviously next week, during our episode, we'll give you an update on the standings. But with that, that's the end of our show today. Thank you so much again for tuning in. Feel free to comment below. Let us know what you liked, didn't like, anything you want us to add. We obviously appreciate all the feedback that you have. But with that, we'd once again like to thank you so much for listening and hope to catch you next week on our next episode of the Not Five Guys podcast.